All right, just one little introduction for you guys who have maybe joined our Art 2030 course a little bit later than the others. We took the first week a little slowly, just thinking about reading the syllabus and getting acquainted with Blackboard. So I'll do a walkthrough of our Blackboard site in a little bit. But I wanted to go through my traditional intro of art history and really set the tone for what this class is about and what you can expect. So one question I sometimes get is why art history as opposed to just regular old history, right? And it's a means of kind of including the visual culture of the people and the places, like here, Germantown, Marburgo, important developments in human culture and human technology, famous people, like rulers and the artists themselves. It's a way of integrating traditional history, that is that continuous narrative of humanity and human culture with the visual aspects of the worlds of the past. So you could call this course the study of visual culture instead of art history, because what we're looking at, beginning in the Renaissance, of course, is oil paint portraits. We're looking at the ink drawings of masters like Leonardo da Vinci. We are looking at architecture and design, sculpture, that is both religious and secular. We're looking at artists whose art is very political and very of their time, but like Vincent van Gogh, also very introspective. And as time progresses, as new technology comes along, like photography, the nature of art in many ways changes and stays the same. And new issues come up, like sexism and gender issues and feminism. All of this in the context of ye old dusty dusty history book can become a little bit tedious. But when focusing on the imagery that we as a culture have created, that we as a culture consume, as consumers of art, consumers of news, yes, even television and the internet are within our purview in this course. Not just that, but also games, because all of that goes back to the elements and principles of design that we begin with in formal analysis. Ultimately ending in one of the ways that I communicate with you, right? Video online, social media like Instagram and Twitter, all these places where I bet you've been exposed to art history, whether or not you know it, or maybe you just didn't think of it in that way. So in that vein of as official and academic as it can sound, I bet you know more about art than maybe you'd let on. For instance, this painting here. If I had to quiz you who made it, what is it made of, and you weren't allowed to look it up on your phones, you weren't allowed to Google it or check the textbook, you'd probably get several of these questions right. Number one, this is arguably one of the most famous paintings in the world. Maybe you know by now. It has pride of place in its current museum these days. It has quite a history. It's been stolen, it's been shot at, and it is currently valued by the insurance company as invaluable. It's the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. a painting or portrait made of
oil paint on poplar wood. When was it made? Well, we'll study Leonardo's time, the 15th century and the 16th century, coming up in chapters that you will soon read. Now, where is it from? Leonardo da Vinci, Mona Lisa. What do those names sound like? Even though it is currently in the Louvre Museum in Paris, it's an Italian painting of an Italian woman by an Italian master painter. Why was it made? Well, why do you take selfies? Why did you get school pictures taken? It was a means of recording Mona or Madonna, my lady Lisa's likeness for posterity as the member of a great family. Lisa Gherardini is wife to a wealthy Italian merchant. And to have your portrait done by Leonardo would have been a great boost to their status as well. And just what I said about value, I want to push you toward a different definition of the word. So think of our study and vocabulary and our slide lists as building up a wall of bricks. The bottom bricks are the basics, right? Description, being able to describe the work. Analysis, being able to compare and contrast with other works. Being able to spot how color is used or how form is used. Then you have interpretation and personal report, where you can add a little bit of yourself. It's a little more subjective, right? Whereas analysis is a bit more objective. All of that supports the idea of evaluation, not necessarily in monetary value, but in historical value, aesthetic value as well. Take, for instance, Georgia O'Keeffe's work here. What's the value of it? I mean, monetary, the materials, the time, the skill that O'Keeffe took to paint it, the aesthetic value, beauty, the scale at which she zooms in on the Jack in the Pulpit flower, but also historical value. O'Keeffe is, to this day, an important figure in American painting history because of her gender, because of her prolific work, how much she painted, and because of her rise from, discouraged young art student to worldwide art star. So it's the aesthetic and the historical that we're really concerned with, rather than the monetary. Although, how much do you think this thing's worth? Damien Hirst's The Kingdom from 2008, and he's done a couple works involving actual sharks. Look at the medium here. This is a tiger shark preserved in a glass and steel case in silicone and a formaldehyde solution. So if you know how big tiger sharks are, this is not going to fit in your living room. But if you could buy it, how much do you think you'd pay for it? $1 million? 100,000? Not even? Do you even think it's art? This sold for $17.2 million around 2001, I believe. 2011, excuse me. Obviously not bought by a private person to put in their living room, but to add to a collection of art. So the art world is a place of big money investors for sure. It's also a place of poetry and meaning and interpretation that many think artists like Hirst don't quite live up to. One last shot of people enjoying The Kingdom. I don't know. Is it art? We'll end up asking that question a lot. So tips and tricks before I show you our course site. Use the Blackboard media, and by that I mean the videos and links that I add, in addition to what's offered by the publisher in the ebook while you're reading, while you're reviewing. All of it is meant to give you a different perspective, maybe explain a term in a different way so you'll easily understand it. For our paper topic, look ahead to later chapters before choosing. You might find a 20th century artist like O'Keeffe or 21st century artist like Hirst more interesting. And for those of you who haven't taken art history before, or haven't taken Art 2020 specifically, you can consult Volume 1, which is chapters 1 through 14, to get acquainted with Greco-Roman culture, Christian religion, European geography. These are all things that will be important to beginning a study of the Renaissance and onward until we get to contemporary art worldwide. And most importantly, stay in touch. We're an asynchronous class. You can log in and view this video whenever you want. You can also log in during my office hours, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, 2 to 4, to get in touch with me. But there's other ways, email, voicemail, and the Remind app included in our syllabus. So let me get out of this and pull up our course site. Now I'm in the lessons folder right now where we have week 1 and week 2. So I'm actually going to post this video in week 1 as an introduction. You'll be able to review, if you haven't yet, the syllabus, the art history worksheet, which will be useful for the vocabulary of formal analysis, outlined in the intro, What is Art History, of the textbook. And you also have your research assignment, including the rubric and all you need to get started with that. In week 2, that's when we're going to start in on chapter 20. So be on the lookout for a chapter 20 video from me going through our slide list. That's my way of narrowing down from all the art described in the chapter to a much more palatable list of around 10 images for you to get to know. And this is an example of that Blackboard media. I have a very wonderful web link for viewing Van Eyck's masterpiece, video about the Renaissance in history, and also a more particular video about the printing process and the emergence of mass media in the 1400s in Germany. So there's plenty to look at, especially when you go to the ebook. Gardner's Art Through the Ages, The Western Perspective, 16th edition. Each chapter has more video. You have wonderfully high resolution images of the artwork that you can zoom in on. And for example, here's our intro. Sometimes this happens. When we're all at home online, we are beholden to the internet connection, right? So be thinking about as well how you want to approach the images. What type of viewing would best help you? Because, for instance, with architecture, this is a photographic shot inside a cathedral. But you might want an even better look, right? So if we go back to our resources here, you'll see that it's very simple in the introduction. But for our first chapter, there's going to be video, there's going to be even a YouTube playlist that you can take a look at, flashcards that you can use that are going to be everything. So use the slide list and narrow down. You don't have to learn every single artwork. And also, one thing that I like the most, and I have it also linked on my Blackboard, is the ability to look at architecture, especially as if you were standing there. So if we take the Beauvais Cathedral, like we saw in the book, we have photographs, yes, but also panorama. So you can pick the inside of the Beauvais Cathedral and look around it and experience it as a building and not just as a photograph. So that is one thing that the internet offers us, that the online environment can do. We can't just jet off to France, right? But we can get a sense of how the architecture creates space and light and a sense of place and setting for the great painted altarpieces that we'll look at in chapter 20. Other important spots on Blackboard, aside from your grades and the library and other tools, are the discussion board, where some of our assignments will be. You can go ahead and introduce yourself. I see some people already have. There's a place for asking questions among yourselves, and I'll be able to ask periodically as well. And this is where you go, writing about art for our assignments that I want to pose as discussion questions as opposed to just regular old essays, right? All of the regular information is up here in information. I've added just today the statement of personal responsibility. This is basically an acknowledgement of what we're all doing to stay safe and healthy during the pandemic, especially if you go to campus, to go to the library, to go to the testing center, to access student services. Make sure you protect yourself and others by wearing a mask, washing your hands, maintaining distance. And if you're ill, if you take your temperature and it's 100 and above, stay home, call your doctor, don't go to campus. Our WebEx meeting room, as you can see here, well, actually, let me go here. There we go. This is where you can find me during office hours. We can also set up an appointment if you need to, outside of the hours of 2 to 4, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. If you need an appointment, there's an appointment sign-up sheet that takes you to my Google Sheet. So I have my office hours blocked off, but anything 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., you can go ahead and enter your name and email. If you need something before 9 or after 9, email me with the time that you need and we'll get something arranged. Other than that, you can use the Remind app with our course ID in the syllabus. You can get reminders from me that way. Reminders also appear as announcements, and this is your first step. This is where you'll enter when you click on our course. So go ahead and give the MLK Junior announcement a read. This is really to, again, set the tone, especially for when we get into the aspects of religion and politics in the art world and beyond. We're going to talk about sensitive things. We're going to talk about controversial things, because that is what artists, especially in the more recent centuries, have tackled in their painting and their sculpture and in their architecture. So we need to remember netiquette, right? To be civil with each other, to approach issues with empathy and evidence, and to express ourselves in a way that is inclusive as opposed to exclusive. The last thing I'll tell you about is the groups. I'm using these study groups not attached to any particular assignment,
But these are ways for you to contact your group members, like study buddies. So if you don't already know anybody who's also taking Art 2030, you can trade phone numbers if you like, emails. You also have a group site where you can exchange documents, you can discuss things, you can use all of these tools to study together, to answer each other's questions about the material. So the bottom line is you're not alone in your study of visual culture. I'm here just a click away, and so are your classmates. And if you have any other questions, you can send it to me in Remind, email it, put it in one of the discussion forums like the coffee shop, or ask your classmates. I'll be back soon with some more about formal analysis.